And in that input folder, you have a list of layers. These layers essentially define each individual item in the image, and they can be of anything that kind of any components that make up that image, essentially. So you can see here from a face, you have that background, the face, any accessories, and the various constituents of the face. Pretty simple. And then in each of those layers, what we have is a collection of what we call rarity folders right now. So these are essentially just groupings of items, and the items are in the actual folders. These are what make up the image. These are groupings of items just in different buckets. And one thing that should be noted is that these should be consistent across all layers. So if you have 4 folders in the face layer, the same 4 folders should be present in all other layers here. So that's kind of one requirement which catches people out quite a bit, maybe due to our design, maybe bad design decisions there, but that's kind of how that works. And each folder you have your individual image items. So yes, transparency through kind of items that constitute the image. So that's kind of how we expect the input. When it comes to the application, if you just run it, it's a portable executable, so there's no need to install anything. You get this application kind of view. Again, this is how it currently looks at the time of making this. This is prone to change, but the basic idea should remain. So typically, the first thing you should do is select the input folder and select the input folder we kind of mentioned. What the application then does is it loads the layers in kind of one list, and then the rarity folders we mentioned earlier in another list. And what we allow you to do is to kind of set probability, I guess, percentages on each of these to kind of determine the odds of rolling a particular combination, say, or rolling into that particular layer, so or bucket as well. And that allows you to kind of customize relatively decently, as long as you don't generate too many images, the rarity of each parts in your image. And then you can see here we have a kind of preview component which allows you to just play around with this, test a few things out. So one thing you can also do is move around these layers. So you can see here background should really be at the back, and if I put it at the back of the image, then you get a few extra components. And the way the image works is the layers which are towards the top are towards the back of the image, and the more you bring the layers forward, say, the more forward in the image it goes. So you can see here the background is moving more and more forward, things are obscured, and now it's right at the front. So that's kind of how you align your image in this tool. And what this tool also allows you to do, I mentioned, is to set certain probabilities of items. So say we want only 10% of our images to have this face, this face. What we mean here by face is the circle outside. You can set this percentage here, and then when the image does generate it, only 10% of the generated images, of the rolled images, I should say, or there's a 10% chance of rolling into the face layer. Obviously, if you generate all possible combinations for the inputs you give, the percentage, we don't duplicate images. So one thing this program does do is only output unique images. So if you roll all possible combinations, that will mean that the rarity is not decided by this, it's decided by just what possible combinations are there from your input components, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's not delve too deeply into that. So the way the image is generated is there's a certain percentage to go into every single layer, and if you go into that layer for a particular image, there's also this percentage here to kind of go into each rarity folder. That allows you to customize, say, certain rarer items you might want, or certain categories, down to you really. But 2 roles, one to select the layers, or a bunch of roles to select the layers, 1 role for each layer, and then 1 extra role to determine which folder you go into. And once you're into a specific folder, just a random item is picked from there and selected to be added here. So that's how an image is constructed. I hope that's kind of clear. I realize I've rambled a little bit. But next, before you generate, you might want to select how many kind of images you want to generate. So I'll set this to be 50. And then you're able to select the art base name. What this does it adds it prefixes essentially the say image name, the image name in the metadata. It doesn't actually change the image file, but it adds say an image name. I'll get into this later. And then you also select the kind of blockchain you want the metadata to be formatted for over here. So once all that's set up, it's as simple as clicking generate NFTs, and the program will do its thing and run through the process I mentioned earlier and generate the NFTs. Obviously, you can stop at any time, but you might want to delete the output. When it comes to the output, the program is set to output in the same directory as the input. So an output folder will be created. If it already exists, it'll overwrite any existing kind of folders in there, and it generates two folders, one called images, one called metadata. The images will house all of the generated images, so no need to explain much there. This is what you kind of wanted. And the metadata, this is the metadata which is associated with each image. So one is associated with image one, etc., etc. So if we go into one.json, you'll see here that you have a bunch of different properties. And when I mentioned earlier that the name we set was for the metadata, this is kind of what I meant. You have the name here. And one thing I didn't mention, which I should have mentioned when it came to the input images or the input folder, is both for the layer names and for the individual file names, please kind of, when it comes to naming, don't have spaces, have kind of underscores delineating them or separating the words, because the way our program currently passes things or processes that word is by looking for these underscores and then turning them into spaces and then capitalizing the first letters. What that kind of allows you to do is in this metadata object, when it comes to generating the traits, what happens is the background is the layer of the layer name, and then the value is the file name, if that makes sense. You have a list of traits, which are essentially the components that make up an image. And these are the traits that, if I go to Opensea to some random thing, these are the traits that will be shown here in the properties section. So here, the glasses would be the layer name, Tough Ape would be the image name in this particular case. And that's a basic rundown of really how everything works. So one thing I should also mention is because these images kind of are layered on top of each other, each of these parts should really have the same dimension or the same resolution as every other image, just so that positioning is correct. So that's how we deal with positioning through this application, is just we rely on the images to be already pre-positioned properly. And yeah, that's I think everything that I wanted to run through. If there are any other questions or queries, please do either leave them in the comments, or you can always come to I don't know, GitHub or something if you have any issues. And I hope you enjoy the application. I hope it serves its purpose. And I'll stop rambling now, and I'll leave you guys to it.